In this video, we're going to be taking a look at an incremental update to the existing top tier Ruby Amethyst deck from Rise of the Floodborn, as we now have access to the cards from Into the Inklands. Until, a lot of that product gets opened up and gets regularly into the market and exchanging hands, what are some of the minor updates you can make to make this deck more competitive in the next week or two until all that product is available and we see how the meta shapes up? Well, what you saw in that opening clip was me make an adaptation to this deck to incorporate Maui's Fishhook, and we'll go over the relevance of this card in just a moment, but also the inclusion of Prince Eric. Now, these are both right now, as of like the second day the set is released. I think I'm making this on the Saturday. These cards are fairly cheap, right? The Maui's Fishhook is a starter deck card, and the Prince Eric is like a $2 super rare. And these cards should get cheaper over time as more and more product becomes readily available. But this is good updates for the deck because Maui's Fishhook solves the problem for A, the mirror match, but also B, stops you from playing kind of a bricky card in Peter Pan Shadow. Because in steel matchups where Peter Pan Shadow wouldn't be useful, you can't ink it. And in those kind of steel matchups where they run Benja and your Maui's Fishhook is vulnerable, you can just ink the Fishhook because you won't necessarily need it to counter evasives. In addition, though, if you're playing a deck that doesn't have item removal and you establish a Fishhook, you can see how the advantage of it can play out. Not only do you get to play those abilities for free if you have a Maui on field, and we all know how good Maui Hero to All from the first chapter is, but just being able to pay 2 and buff up a character by 3 strength or give it evasive to take out that opposing evasive threat is pretty strong. It single-handedly allows you, with the Ruby Amethyst deck, the ability to combat those aggro evasive decks as well as those top end heavy decks. I remember facing a Popsicle deck where they dropped a Tamatoa and giving +3 strength to my Maui for free, making it a 9/5 easily swung over that Tamatoa. Some additional additions that I made to the deck was incorporating 2 small Pinocchios, as you can see from that opening clip how useful it was, just being able to exert characters to force the outs with Maui's Fishhook now boosting up characters, being able to take out anything or giving it evasive in order to use my like Mim Foxes, Maui's, etc., or even my Prince Eric's to crash and get like instant 2-for-1 values even further. You'll notice that there is an exclusion of the Ursula, the Elsa, these other top-end heavy cards. And I think that for the most part, the Ruby Amethyst deck might be better off, at least in the beginning of the format, playing a little bit closer to the ground. You do have a number of aggro threats, your small questers just pinging damage here and there, or, pinging lore, your Kuzcos, your Mim Snakes, Mim Foxes, and of course your Mini Surfers and Goats to close out the games. Eric also quests for 2, and this card represents tremendous value when you pair it with Teeth and Ambitions, because not only do you most likely take out a card by putting 2 damage on it with Teeth and Ambitions, but with Eric getting banished and potentially singing the Teeth for free, you are also able to take out an opposing character just straight up banishing it. So we opted to not play the Tremaines, not play the Ursulas, not play the Elsas, and this makes the deck a little bit easier to play on curve because, as you can see from the inkable and on inkable count, we are at 47 inkables and only 13 uninkables. And our top hand heavy uninkables are mainly concentrated in Be Prepared, which means even if you have like a Rabbit and an Eric in hand, you are at least able to play those earlier on in the game so they're not stuck up in your hand, and the Rabbit obviously replaces itself when it draws cards. So again, this is a very incremental update. I will be posting more like complete revolutionized Ruby Amethyst decks later on with like Jim Hawkins's and locations, etc. But for now, if you're like me and you're looking at, well, what little adaptations can I make to my deck to bring to the league next week before I get all my product, before people have lots of resources to trade, this is something I think that is reasonable to approach. So let's go ahead and take a look at some more matches, and we'll kind of analyze how the deck will perform. So in this first match here, we're going second against the dreaded Emerald Steel. Many people are playing this online. It's probably the most played deck that I run into, and it is a very strong color combination. I've already made a video on this, obviously outlining the Bayou, yes, correction on the pronunciation, thank you everybody, and the Sheriff of Nottingham with Beast Relentless. And while I'm seeing a lot of videos and people commenting on it's not infinite and blah, 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 yeah, I know it's not technically infinite, but it's infinite enough. If it gets you 10 lore, 12 lore, 14 lore, it's likely enough to close the game because this color pairing in and of itself is very strong inherently, and you don't necessarily need to get all 20 or infinite lore right away. If you have 3 toughness on board, 5 toughness on board, double that for what the Beast Relentless will quest for if you can't remove it in time. So the deck puts on a lot of pressure. It is a very, very strong combination. Now, the only thing about this pairing is that you know that Emerald has a lot of strong cards, but they're also very heavy on the uninkable count. So unless you build your deck correctly, you're going to be bricked up if you can't play properly on curve, and you're going to just be stuck with unplayable cards in your hand, right? So the opponent establishing an Ursula here is very, very strong, obviously, and us being able to teeth and ambitions away that morph is very beneficial because, as you can see, we potentially kept the opponent off of a shift like Robin Hood or that Tinkerbell that they ended up inking, which might slow them down for casting a whole new world, which is strong. We do take out the hook thanks to the Mim Fox, and 3 rabbits in hand is pretty bad. I mean, I think, what was I showing you guys? 13 uninkables, and look at our hand, right? It's just how it goes on Pixelborn sometimes. And what we do have to fear here is the whole new world, right? Because we would lose all these rabbits, all these uninkables. So we have to do our best to kind of maintain some kind of presence. And because of that, I'm going to just drop the rabbit instead of the Eric. And of course, I draw into another uninkable, play 13 in the deck and just keep drawing into them there. But I want to be able to draw enough so that I can continue to ink, because I do anticipate that the opponent is going to drop a whole new world. Now, because they ended up inking that Beast Tragic Hero, that tells me that they are kind of ink starved here, and I think that was kind of showcased when they skipped last turn. You can see they had Mother Knows Best, and I think it's revealed later on that they're sitting on like double grab your sword, so they're really heavy on the uninkable count. And them bouncing back both of my cards here with Mother Knows Best isn't necessarily the worst thing, because I can establish the Maui now, take out the Ursula. The opponent inks the top decked Ursula, revealing that yes, they are likely ink starved, because with nothing on board, they would obviously play that Ursula if they could, but they need to get the ink up there. I thought they were maybe sitting on like whole new worlds too, but you'll see that they are indeed sitting on grab your swords. They're just trying to continue to ink. I don't know, maybe they're anticipating that they're going to top deck into a whole new world here. It's kind of interesting, but we're just going to establish another Merlin Rabbit and ink the Minnie Mouse, because I'm not necessarily interested in playing the aggro game. I'm more interested in just establishing control and just having a healthy board presence, because I know the Minnie Mouse is susceptible to things like Smash. The opponent clearly is getting a little frustrated here. They drop a 1-drop Robin Hood and then play out their other Grab Your Sword, so you can see how many uninkables they were just sitting on in hand. And yeah, this is why this color pairing, you need to be very careful with your selection. I'm going to, again, just try to play around a potential shift here. So I'm going to smash the Mim Fox into the Robin Hood after tapping it down with the Pinocchio. And at this point, I think my opponent kind of realizes I just have too much of an advantage if they don't get the whole new world soon. And even if they do get it, they're going to have to hard cast it, and they're going to lose tempo because of it. They establish a Sheriff, and I think they kind of just realize that, yeah, it's GG's once I cycle the Pinocchios once again, and the opponent just ends up scooping it up. Let's move on to the next match. All right, in this next matchup here, we are going up against Amethyst Steel, and our opening hand here doesn't have any 1-drops, and our only 2-cost card is the Teeth and Ambitions. So we absolutely need to mulligan pretty aggressively, I would say, in order to try and hope to draw into something good. I probably should have also tried to put back the Maleficent potentially, but the small one there, because obviously I drew into the dragon. But I guess we got our 1-drop, and depending on what the opponent plays, because we do see that like hooks, or in this case Rafiki, as a 1-drop, these X and 2 strength characters are getting more popular. So I'm fine using my turn 2 to actually hard cast that Teeth and Ambitions and take out the opponent's 1-drop. This will prevent them from establishing the Mim Snake, but they do have a Robin Hood, which is very strong. Thankfully though, we have a Mim Fox to save our Minnie Mouse and use it as an ink resource next turn, preventing the opponent from taking it out with the Robin Hood pinging 1 damage on it. So the thing we do have to worry about though, obviously, is the shift Robin Hood on turn 3 and potentially a Sung Whole New World. But given that the opponent was on the draw, they definitely want to be able to dump more of their hand before they cast that Whole New World, most likely, if they have it. But the Amethyst Steel pairing is, you know, pretty much geared around the Jafar. And while people are calling it a gimmick, yes, it is, you know, a kind of gimmicky combo. The Amethyst Steel pairing is still very, very strong. Again, these combos that you see within these ink combinations is not what the deck relies on to win. It's just an additional, like, very powerful win condition. So the same thing with the Emerald Steel build, the same thing with the Amethyst Steel build. These are just like potential things you have to be aware of when you see the certain combo pieces hitting the board. You're like, the opponent could pull off this insanely powerful combo and win the game. But that's not necessarily what they're always going for. And a good player wouldn't be doing that, right? A good player would just be playing the normal game, establishing control or aggro, whatever their strategy is, and working towards the 20 lore while controlling your board, right? If they're just going for a gimmick combo, they're going to lose most of the time because you'll see it coming and you'll be able to deal with it, or they don't properly set it up, or they don't put enough pressure on you, and because of that, you're able to deal with it. So here you can see the opponent able to out my Mim Fox, which is fine. They're going to go ahead and reestablish a Rafiki here, and that's a-okay, because with this Prince Eric, I am, again, pressuring 2 lore, or just, you know, being able to banish it at some point and then take out my opponent's character. We do end up cycling through for another Fox here, which is going to be able to deal with the Robin Hood. And I don't opt to quest with the Eric because the Rafiki with Challenger would just run into it. The Rafiki would die anyways, and then my Eric would get no value off of banishing something else. So they trade the Rafiki into the Mim Fox, and that's fine because my Mim Fox went 2 for 1. But the opponent does have the rabbits, right? And this is a bit of a problem for me because I have to rely on Maleficence to draw, but my opponent clearly is ahead. Thankfully, we do eventually draw into our own rabbit there. So now we're feeling a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to quest with the Eric and pass. If the opponent wants to crash their rabbit into the Eric to take it out, I will take out their rabbit, just get one of those out of rotation. I am a-okay with that. And now we have a mini surfer established. But again, going up against steel, I like Smash personally still, but a lot of these lists online, I'm not really seeing people run Smash in their steel variants. I think Smash is still relevant because the X and 3 stat line is still around in Lorcana in this metagame right now, and it is relevant to take those things out, those characters out. But again, I can understand because like it doesn't deal with locations, and yeah, there's a couple of issues there that you have to try to deal with. Regardless, though, the opponent once again drops a Robin Hood. They keep their Merlin on board. We're up to 6 lore now. We only have 2 cards in hand, and the opponent has 6. So the only like positive in this situation is that if they did have a whole new world, they're likely not trying to cast it. They sing Friends, so they just get additional cards here, and I'm like, okay, I need to see a Friends or something, or a bounce card to start getting some draw going, because the opponent is just eventually going to out-resource me. The saving grace is I do have a Be Prepared in my hand, which I will try to leverage to the maximum advantage here in trying to make the opponent go wide enough that they waste enough resources that I am able to just be prepared eventually. So they're going to go ahead and most likely, they're going to protect the Robin Hood and drop another Rafiki. Interesting. We're going to top deck the Friends, so right on time, as I was just saying. Would love to see a Friends or, you know, a bounce card, and, you know, the Friends draw into the bounce cards, which allow us to continue to draw off the rabbit. And just like that, we go from 2 cards to 5 and a matching 4 board on our side here. We're going to establish double Snake to draw like a ton of cards there off that rabbit, and just continue to quest, because again, I'm anticipating that my this is the advantage of being on the play. My opponent has to deal with my board. I'm at 9 lore, they're at 1, right? So they're not going to quest, they're going to try to deal with my board. And this is why Ruby Amethyst is so strong. And this principle still carries over into the INKLANDS, right? There's limited, like there's limitations to what they can do here. They're going to spend their turn, you know, just trying to do something to slow me down here. So they establish double Robin Hood because they can't deal with the Minnie Mouse. So they end up questing because obviously they can't run into Minnie Mouse, and the snakes are exerted. I am not going to be prepared yet to what might be a surprise to everybody. We draw into a Maui Fishhook, which is okay, but in this instance, like I said against Steel, like I don't want it to get Benjud. The opponent doesn't play evasives. I don't necessarily need the strength boost in this match. So I'm fine just inking it. And I drop a Cusco, which again plays perfectly synergistically with the Be Prepared there. The opponent is going to double ping the mini Surfer. They're going to continue to take care of my board because again, I'm so ahead in the lore count, and the opponent is not questing. They're outing their own board to a certain degree, and they're just a little too slow. Now they do have 6 cards in hand. Are they going to pass turn without doing anything? No, they're going to... Okay, this is pretty strong, to be honest. Like, they're not overextending because of the Mim cards. They're able to bounce back and get additional advantage off the draw. Continue to take out my board here. But now, again, I don't necessarily need to cast Be Prepared because they only have 3 lore on board, and it's not really that threatening, right? So, yeah, they're going to continue to ink, and you can just see how much advantage Rabbit just generates for you here, right? It's absolutely insane. But yeah, we're just going to continue to quest. We're at 15. And now I guess we're going to drop the Be Prepared because we'll be able to draw 2, get another rabbit from the opponent out of rotation. And the opponent is on 6, and we're on 6. We're ahead in the ink count by 2 because we were on the play, and the opponent missed an ink drop. but we're going to be able to at least put in a Minnie Mouse onto the field, Stylish Surfer, after the Be Prepared, so we're not necessarily completely off tempo here. The opponent establishes a Beast Tragic Hero, which is very, very strong, and a Goat, and I draw right on time a Maui, so instead of having to Be Prepared or Maleficent Dragon that beast, I can actually opt to drop the Pinocchio and drop the Maui. Now this is strong because I'll be able to quest to 17 and my Minnie Mouse is likely protected. They need removal spells because they won't be able to deal with the evasive character, and I drop a second mini knowing that the opponent isn't on board wipe. So they end up scooping it up there, and that's just the pressure that you can put on with the new Ruby Amethyst. Again, the Prince Eric forces your opponent to make awkward plays, forces them to slow down, to reevaluate how they're going to play. And the fish hook, as you saw from the opening clip, I know I didn't really use it in these matchups, is just another utility option for the deck that if you go up against the mirror match, you can have that evasive ability without needing to, draw into a Peter Pan Shadow and then it gets outed or it's uninkable in certain matchups and it's not good. The fish hook, either it's ink or it can actually do some work with the item's effects. And if you have Maui, it's free too, right, to activate those effects. Anyways, we're getting kind of long in this video here, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. If you've made it this far, thank you again. A like would be appreciated if you enjoyed this content. And let me know in the comment section below what else you would want to see. I think the next thing I'm going to try to post up is a broom deck, because I've been seeing some comments around that. But again, thank you again for watching. Make sure you're subscribed if you are not already. That's going to do it for me though. Quantum is out.